Hello, everybody, and welcome back to welcome back to 428 Shibuya Scramble. In the last part, we actually got to the end of both Maria and Achi's storylines. They were very interconnected, so I didn't have to touch any of the other three. So now, we have to figure out what the hell everyone else is doing at this time. And I'm wondering... I feel like I want to do Osawa. Tanaka's listening device? That's right, Tanaka possibly has a listening device on him. Whether he knows that or not is the true question. I do not want others intruding into my domain. Accordingly, I do not intrude on others. This is how I've lived my life. This is how I've forged my sense of calm. But something has begun to drive me mad. Boundaries between myself and others have started to collapse. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I will become something other than myself. And that is one thing I fear I could never bear. Oh no, you don't! Kajiwara tackled Tanaka as he strode toward the door. Two men collapsed in a heap in the front entryway. Hey, Tanaka barked. What are you doing? Hold still. Kajiwara ran his bug tractor over Tanaka's body. He began beeping loudly. Aha! Kajiwara pulled off Tanaka's necktie clip. It's a listening device. Tanaka's face went pale. Where did you get this? Kajiwara demanded. Well, Tanaka trailed off into silence. I gave it to him. It was I who had appeared on the second floor landing. You were listening in? Osawa asked brokenly. Ma'am? Kajiwara said. Would you mind explaining this? For once, he seemed deadly serious. No, I was barely able. I get for going with something so cheap. I held out a dangling earpiece. When and where did you get that? Earlier today, when I left to do some shopping. Why did you plant a listening device on Mr. Tanaka? Kajiwara asked. That's what I want to know, Tanaka chimed in. Why would you do this, Miss Osawa? He was trembling. You were outside emailing someone earlier, weren't you, Mr. Tanaka? I saw you from the window. Emailing? Kajiwara looked into Tanaka's face. I nodded. He came back into the house shortly afterwards, and I asked him where he'd gone. And what do you think he said? She was practically gloating, playing to her little audience. She began stalking down the stairs. He said he'd gone to check on something at the lab, despite the fact that he was out in the yard there, fiddling with his phone the whole time. So I figured if I bugged him, he might show his true colors, and... Enough. Osawa cut his wife off. Tanaka had been emailing Hitomi, of course, but he couldn't reveal that now. I think I get what happened here, Kajiwara interposed. He folded his arms. Your wife thought that Mr. Tanaka was in contact with the kidnappers, and so she planted a listening device on him. The detective peered at Tanaka. Who were you emailing, sir? Yes, that's right, I chirped. Show us your phone, Mr. Tanaka. Let's see what you were really up to. Or is there some reason you don't want to show us? Osawa started to panic. If the police checked that cell phone, they'd find the emails from Hitomi. And if the kidnappers somehow found out about that, Maria's life would be in danger. But I was still relentlessly advancing on Tanaka. Stop this! Darling. She turned to him in surprise. Tanaka was sending emails on my behalf, Osawa said. I asked him to do it. Just who was he emailing? It was... You need to think of a lie, fast. It was someone from work. But sir, Kajiwara was quick to butt in. Don't you have a computer in your study? Couldn't you have sent the emails yourself? Detective had to choose now, of all times, to actually be perceptive. I do, but my computer was having problems sending email. I'm not sure what the issue was. Look, the point is, there's no reason to worry about Tanaka's emails. There just isn't, I'm telling you. It's a lame excuse, but he had to just keep pressing it. Anyway, I think we can say we're done here, Osawa said. He opened the front door. Now, if you don't mind, I've asked Tanaka to run some errands for me. Tanaka gave him a quick bow and headed out the door. Hey, wait! Aya started to go after him. Just calm down, Osawa barred the way. There's no way he's connected to the kidnappers. Can't you see that? His voice cracked and he shuddered at a sudden rush of emotion. There, sir, Kajiwara said consolingly. She's just deeply worried about your daughter. I turned around and marched back upstairs. But still, if she is that worried, giving a tie clip as a gift seems a bit... Clothing accessory meant to hold one's necktie in place. In the old days, they were a quintessential part of the salaryman's outfit, along with cufflinks and the company badge. Recently, clip ties have come back into vogue with some older men, now more frequently referred to as tie bars. Kajiwara's muttering trailed off. What do you mean? Osawa asked. Nothing. Not important. The detective waved a hand dismissively, but there had been a definite note of suspicion in his voice. Gulp. Well, back to work. Kajiwara headed back into the living room. Osawa returned to his study and sat in front of his computer. He had no desire to be in the presence of detectives who now crowded his living room. And Ayak Kamiki fan forum for 40 and over was still open on his monitor. He reloaded the page and saw that his earlier thread had gotten a reply. It was from Pretty Honey, a regular contributor to Osawa's threads. Username for someone who posts regularly on the Ayak Kamiki fan forum. Seems to know a lot about agriculture and the police, as evidenced by the statement such as, if the world were a farm with 100 people, as well as a tendency to post to another site called the 87th Precinct Telecommunity. Incidentally, Shinya Kano's girlfriend Rumi also posted the 87th Precinct Telecommunity. From time to time, she has several massive arguments with Pretty Honey there, with the latter criticizing the police for not doing their job, while Rumi insists that police work is very difficult and deserves more credit. Pretty Honey is the father. Ask me. I'll pose the idea of Ayak Miki expanding into America. She should be able to enjoy the success she's earned in Japan without having to struggle overseas. Aya has done so much for us. I'd like to keep her supporting Japan forever. The message was festooned with the sort of emoticons that a young girl might use. Pretty Honey claimed to be a 19-year-old female college student. Although the community was meant for Aya Kamiki fans 40 and over, the settings allowed anyone to post there. The only young woman among the members, however, was Pretty Honey. The thread continued. By the way, have you tried the Aya fortune teller yet? There's a link below. Fortune telling? Huh. Practice of determining a person's future luck or life events using cards, horoscopes, and or other methods of divination. Most people believe such... Oh, fuck, big words. Prognostication... when it foretells something good, and don't believe it when the outlook is bad. That's about as much faith in fortune-telling as someone should have. What? I know. Osawa stared. Should he ask it whether Maria was safe? If it gave him a good answer, he'd believe it. If it were a bad answer, he wouldn't. It might be worth a shot just for the peace of mind it'd bring. He clicked the link and the Aya fortune teller page came up. They asked you to enter your birth date and sex, and then Miki would offer her advice. Osawa would follow the instructions, entering his date of birth, selected male, and then clicked next. Seconds later, his fortune was displayed. You're a very work-minded person. He'd hoped for some insight on Maria, but instead it was just a write-up about his personality. You'd never be able to get by without the devoted support of those around you, but you probably don't realize that, do you? It's a big mistake to think that you can get through all of life's challenges on your own. There's nothing cool about being ignorant. If you don't get over your indifference to the world might start to harbor quite a grudge. Find a way to connect more deeply with the people around you, and start living a better life before it's too late. Just do that, and I'm sure you have a wonderful future ahead. Famous people who got their result. Shinosuke Oarai, the playwright. Head of the Wandering Angels Theater Troupe. He has an interview appointment with Minoru Minorikawa at 2:30 this afternoon. Sawa couldn't help but feel that the advice was painfully appropriate. He went back to the forum and replied to Pretty Honey. Nice to hear from you again, Pretty Honey. I definitely know how you feel about Aya Kamiki being yours. Still, I'm confident she's got what it takes to persevere and succeed in America. And if she does fail, well, all of us in Japan will be here to welcome her back all the same. Guess this voyage to America I've concocted just has me a little worked up. Osawa clicked post and leaned back in his chair. Mr. Osawa! Mr. Osawa! It was Kajiwara shouting from outside the door. First the toilet, then lunch. What is it now? There's been a development in the case. Please join us in the living room. We have important matters to discuss. Kajiwara had his detective face on. When Osawa entered the living room, Ai was already there, looking stern and solemn. Now that you're both here, Kajiwara said, allow me to share what we know. You've identified a location that appears to be the Syndicate's hideout. You have? What about Maria? Is she there? Osawa exclaimed. We still haven't been able to ascertain whether your daughter is safe. Well then, what were these important matters you need to discuss? Osawa felt a wave of anxiety rush through him. The hideout in question is a condominium in Hiro. And it's owned by whom? Mr. Osawa, please calm down. Tell me! Go on, out with it! Kajiwara took a deep breath. The residence is owned by Mamoru Tanaka. Osawa was speechless. He couldn't process what he was hearing. Tanaka? Lies! I shrieked. Just what are you implying? That Mr. Tanaka is the kidnapper? Where's your proof? With all due respect, ma'am, weren't you suspicious of Mr. Tanaka yourself? I suppose, but you did go so far as to stick a listening device on him. Flustered, I withdrew into a vacant silence. The sudden ringing of the phone startled everyone in the room. Was that Tanaka? No, couldn't be. No way. The phone was wiretapped. The detective wearing the headset nodded to Kajiwara, who in turn motioned for Osawa to pick it up. Hello, he said cautiously. Ah, hello. Is this the home of Maria Osawa? The voice was not Tanaka's. Osawa didn't recognize it, but the veil of despair that hung before him thinned slightly. Is this the home of Hitomi Osawa? This time the man on the phone used Hitomi's name instead. Yes, that's right. The caller immediately hung up. As Osawa stood there, dumbstruck, Kajiwara gently took the receiver and hung up the phone. One of the detectives addressed Kajiwara. We've traced the source of the call to her cell phone. Also, we've pinpointed the base station used. Informed Director Kuze so he could prepare a team, just in case. Just in case? Osawa asked. What do you mean by that? Kajiwara frowned slightly. Just because this is a kidnapping case doesn't mean that every phone call comes from the kidnapper. We'll look into it, of course, but... Ah, I see. Besides, right now, confirming Mr. Tanaka's whereabouts takes priority. Don't you agree? Osawa nodded. Someone should call him, the detective added. I'll do it. I got out her cell phone and dialed up Tanaka. Where was Mr. Tanaka headed? Kajiwara asked. Eyed Osawa keenly. Actually, no. Even leaving out the part about Hitomi, that was still the truth. Tanaka was behind the kidnapping. Osawa knew he ought to tell the police about the blue minivan and the emails from his daughter. Part of him still trusted Tanaka deep down, and he'd bring himself to reveal it all. We have investigators en route to Tanaka's condominium, Kajiwara said. Let's wait for them to report in. We have investigators en route to Tanaka's condominium, Kajiwara said. With the what? Far side of the room, I was squawking in frustration. Despite several attempts, she hadn't been able to get through to Tanaka. Kajiwara's phone rang and he pulled it from his pocket. Kano? What's going on? He headed into one corner as he spoke into the receiver. I suppose they'd be all right. What for, though? After a few more quiet words, Kajiwara held his phone out to Osawa. One of the investigators on the scene would like to speak with you. Drowning in confusion, Osawa took hold of the phone. Osawa speaking. Can I help you? This is Detective Kano from the Shibuya precinct. Time is critical, so I need to just cut to the chase here. There was a pause as the speaker took a deep breath before continuing. Did you give the antiviral drug to your daughter Hitomi? What? Osawa was so startled that his voice caught in his throat. What are you talking about? Antiviral research was top secret. So how did some detective from the Shibuya precinct know about it? Yeah, I know. Osawa was bewildered. I'm the one asking the questions here, Mr. Osawa. Did you give the antiviral drug to your daughter Hitomi? I'm not sure I understand the question. Know what the Syndicate is really after, Mr. Osawa. Osawa's mind went blank, and he heard that what Kano said next. Could give no reply. Mr. Osawa, the detective continued after a moment. Is everything all right? Without really thinking, Osawa hung up. They were after the virus. Did he mean the virus kept at the lab? Wait, hold on. The detective had to be wrong about that. Kidnappers must have the virus already. Otherwise, I wouldn't have had to do what I did to Hitomi. Do not look away. These are your crimes. At last, Osawa understood what those emails from A were all about. They were a preview of the tragedy that was yet to unfold. Kidnappers probably meant to start the main event soon. Might already be too late to stop them. Mr. Osawa, Kajiwara asked. Are you all right? The detective gazed with concern into Osawa's ashen face. Bracing himself, Osawa spoke up, his voice hoarse and dry. A killer virus is about to be unleashed in Tokyo. And I know who's responsible. It's me. Sudden confession caused the detectives on site to stir like a hornet nest. Please, arrest me. Feeling the weight of his crimes crushing down on him, Osawa dropped his gaze to the floor. He held out both his wrists. I'll tell you everything down at the station, he said. Anything you need to know. Osawa imagined bodies dropping left and right. There were limits to what might be cured by the small stockpile of antiviral his labs currently contained. They were unable to quarantine the infected in time, and Shibuya, though all of Japan might be engulfed in a pandemic that the drug could never stop. Massive outbreak of a particular infection on the regional or global scale. In 14th century Europe, a massive cholera outbreak is said to have killed 2/3 of the population, and the Spanish flu outbreak of the early 20th century killed at least 25 million people worldwide. Given modern advances in transportation, some researchers are of the opinion that the global risk of a pandemic is higher than ever before. He can only hope that his complying with authorities might help stop the spread of the infection before it was too late. Guilty conscience. The thought of the Uwa virus devastating Japan filled Osawa with despair. Blaming himself, he asked to be arrested. This only happened because of what Kano said to him. A simple error in word choice led to Osawa to a completely wrong conclusion. Kano ought to properly inform Osawa what the kidnappers are after. So I'm trapped at that moment. Yeah, that jump is also Kano. Alright, I guess we're going to Kano then. Kanan? Kanan, Kano muttered. What's Kanan? The stench of blood hung heavy in the basement bar. Stanley was silent, staring at the criminal's corpse. Hey, do you know anything about this? Kano asked. Still, Stanley gave no response. Silent chairman again, huh? Kano huffed. The American glanced at him gravely. In all likelihood, the one who did this was acting alone. Alone? Against this many other people? Who on earth? There's no need for you to know. Cut the crap, Kano snapped. He grabbed Stanley by the collar. There's someone involved in this case who's capable of something like this. I need to know about it. How am I supposed to do my job if you keep me in the dark? Stanley remained stone-faced. Look, not afraid of the risks, Kano said. And I'll be a lot more effective if you at the least fill me in on the basics here. The more you know, the sooner you'll wind up dead. Kano tightened his grip. But it's okay if I wind up dead while I'm still in the dark, huh? Fine, Stanley said. I'll answer your first question. He brushed Kano's arm aside. Kanan is the name of a covert operative from the Middle East. In simple terms, a type of spy that infiltrates hostile territories to carry out various clandestine activities? What? I believe she's the one who killed these people here. Middle East? A covert operative? Kano hadn't expected spycraft to be involved with this. Yes, she's an assassin and a cryptanalyst specialist. Do you recall the massive jailbreak from Abu Ghraib prison a while back? Prison in Iraq, west of Baghdad. Under the Hussein government, it was an internment facility for political prisoners, but following the Iraq War, it was used by the U.S. Army to house prisoners of war. In April of 2004, photographs of detainees being tortured by U.S. soldiers were released, causing a massive scandal. President Bush later made the decision to have the facility demolished. Kanan was the one who provided the intel the escapees used to get out. Kano was at a loss for words. The case was suddenly starting to seem a lot more sinister. Whoever this Kanan was, she'd apparently killed nearly a dozen people with only a knife. She was clearly no one to trifle with. Just what kind of individual were they dealing with here? He could scarcely imagine. Once again, Kano surveyed the crime scene. Each of the murdered criminals had had his throat slit. From the look of the deep, clean cuts, the killer hadn't hesitated in the slightest. Okay, so then what connection does this Kanan have with the mastermind behind this kidnapping? Kanan had killed all the foreign Syndicate members in this bar. Did that mean she and the person behind the kidnapping were enemies? Or perhaps she and the kidnapper were working in concert and she'd carried out the slaying as part of some plan to get rid of some loose ends? I believe I said I'd answer one question. Turning away, Stanley picked up a file from atop a nearby table. Apparently, he wasn't in the sharing mood. Realizing that further questions would be pointless, Kano peered sidelong at the file as Stanley opened it. Inside was a detailed map of Shibuya. There are various routes marked with arrows and times. That's the plan for the ransom relay. Kano was so excited he blurted his thoughts out loud. It appeared that the ultimate goal for the ransom was a condominium. The address and the time, 2:20, were written in red ink. Kano put in an immediate call to the investigation task force to relay this information. Final destination is Ground Hill number 405 in Hiro 5-34, Shibuya. Alright, Kuze told him. We'll look into who owns the condo in question. You and Stanley head over there now. I'm sending backup to go in with you. You have authorization to apprehend the suspect. Finally hearing the order that he'd so long been waiting for, Kano felt a spark of determination flare inside of him. Alright, let's go, he said. Some of the excitement slipped into his voice. Stanley, still solemn, closed the file and followed him out of the bar. Stanley drove along the Inokashira Dori toward Hiro, where the finish line for the ransom relay was located. His demeanor was cold and brooding, in sharp contrast with Kano's gung-ho readiness. He seemed lost in some deep and cheerless thought. Kuze's voice came in over the wireless as the car came out onto the Mejidori. We've identified the owner of the condominium. It's... Kano held his breath in anticipation. The name Kuze spoke caught him by surprise entirely. Yaw! Kuze's voice came in over the wireless as the car came out onto Majidori. We've identified the owner of the condominium. It's Mamoru Tanaka, his colleague of Kenji Osawa. What? Kano squawked. This was an unexpected twist. Kajiwara confirms that Tanaka left the Osawa residence at just around 1400 hours. No word on his movements since then. It's possible he headed to his private condo, where the Atachi case is slated to end up. Any officer who runs across Tanaka is to apprehend him on sight. Kuze cut the connection. This Mastervine you've been chasing? Kano asked. Is it Tanaka? Stanley didn't reply. Fine, never mind. I just wish I could know if Tenno is safe. Still worried about that traitor, huh? So Stanley could ignore all of his questions, but still remember to make snide remarks. Talking about Tenno is the only thing that gets a reaction out of you, isn't it? Kano snorted. What makes you so certain he can't be a traitor? Tenno just isn't like that. That's not an answer, Stanley scoffed. Alright, I've watched this man work for years. I know him. He has no reason to betray the Force. You've watched him work, huh? What about his private life, then? You know all about that, too? He hasn't had money trouble or anything like that? Kano felt his blood starting to boil. I don't care what you think, he said. I trust Detective Tenno. Trust him? On what basis? I don't have any basis to have faith in someone. I don't need any basis to have faith in someone, Kano snapped. Without any basis in fact, it's just plain sentimentality, Stanley said. There's no reason or logic to it. A thin smile came to his face. Be they friends or family, you could never really know other people. The only person you can trust is yourself. Kano had no response for such an emotionless statement. He looked away. He and Stanley were just plain incompatible. It seemed like no amount of talking would let them get through to one another. Never take anything at face value, Kano. You start trusting too much, you're basically as good as dead. Kano just stared out the window. Shibuya precinct came into view. Tanaka's condo wasn't much further now. They were outside of Tanaka's condo now. Over there, Stanley said, keeping his voice down. Across the street was one of the foreign syndicate members, walking briskly, the attaché case clutched at his side. "I'm making the arrest." "Kano, wait!" Stanley exclaimed. Kano heard him loud and clear, but he had no intention of stopping. He approached with the criminal at full speed, then leapt to tackle him around the waist. The two men fell to the pavement in a tangled heap. The collision sent the attaché case flying. Kano's eyes tracked the case for a moment too long. He was caught off guard when the man threw a punch at him. The blow caught him right in the jaw, snapping his head back. For a moment, Kano saw stars. As he shook off the impact, the man sprang to his feet and sprinted away in the direction of Stanley's car. "Stanley!" Kano shouted. "Grab him!" Stanley ignored the man and instead went for the attaché case. "Oh, come on! Really?" Kano had no choice but to pursue the perp himself. He hadn't come this far just to let the crooks get away now. Suddenly, the fleeing man skidded to a stop. Several cars had pulled across the road ahead, and detectives were pouring out of them. His escape route cut off, the criminal resigned himself to capture. While Kano helped make the arrest, several of the other detectives broke into Tanaka's condo. Stanley, meanwhile, was carefully inspecting the exterior of the attaché case. He'd already opened it. It was stuffed with bundles of banknotes. 50 million yen ransom was back in police hands. "This is a decoy," the American muttered under his breath. "Wonder where—" His words trailed off, but Kano had heard them. "What did you expect?" the detective demanded. "Samples of the new drug in there?" As usual, Stanley gave no reply. The look on his face, however, told Kano he'd been right on the mark. Some of the backup team emerged from Tanaka's condo. Kano turned to them, feeling a sudden surge of anxiety for Maria. "What's the situation in there?" he asked. They told him what they'd found, that they found no one in Tanaka's room. So the hostage's situation remains unknown, and the main culprit has evaded capture. This case hasn't been solved. In fact, it was still unfolding in the worst way conceivable. And still, Stanley remained focused on the attaché case, pondering it with a thoughtful expression. "Look," Kano told him, "I'm going to request that I be returned to my normal duties. Maria still needs to be rescued, and I still need to find out what happened to Hitomi and Detective Tateno." For once, Stanley actually responded. "Hitomi? Yes, that's it. Makes perfect sense that they'd have her carry it." "Huh? What do you mean?" "The attaché case relay was a fake-out." "Well, slow down," Kano said, wishing he could calm himself with his words. "Explain what you're talking about." "Somehow the kidnappers made contact with Kenji Osawa and got him to have Hitomi carry the drug, separate from the ransom." "Wait, you're saying they had Hitomi bring them the drug?" Stanley nodded. Case handoffs were a sort of camouflage, a way for them to keep the police distracted from their real goal. Kano nutted. It had indeed felt like the case relay was a decoy, an attempt to buy time. If the Syndicate were really after anything else, that would explain why so many of their actions had appeared to make no sense. "So," Kano asked, "what sort of drug is this? Why would they go to such lengths to get their hands on it?" It's an antiviral, Stanley replied after some hesitation. A way to cure people infected with a very particular virus. What virus are we talking about? It's called UA. Kano's never heard of it. Still, he could imagine the possibilities. Suppose this UA was something like the Ebola virus. Discovered in Sudan in 1976, infection causes Ebola hemorrhagic fever, resulting in high fever and massive bleeding throughout the body. At present, there is no vaccine to prevent infection, nor any drug to cure the disease after it manifests. Or perhaps HIV. Human immunodeficiency virus. HIV destroys the cells that are essential for regulating cell-mediated immunity. Considerably reducing immune response, this effect can result in infections that would ordinarily be fought off easily, developing into serious illnesses. There are various treatments, but as of yet, nothing that will eradicate the virus completely. Even the all-too-familiar influenza. An infectious disease caused by the influenza virus. Symptoms are similar to that of the common cold, but are much more severe, occasionally resulting in death. There are three main types of the virus, A, B, and C, with A and B causing the typical run of the illness in humans. Neuraminidase is recommended as an effective inhibitor, but this merely alleviates the symptoms and is not a complete cure. There are medicines that could treat all of these diseases, but nothing that could cure them completely. Any drug that could do that would be worth vast sums of money. Kano, do you have any means of getting in touch with Mr. Osawa? Yes, I know one of the detectives stationed at his home. Check in with him ASAP. Find out whether or not he gave the antiviral to Hitomi. Kano suppressed a scowl. It looked like he wasn't done assisting Stanley yet. He got out his cell phone and dialed up Kajiwara. Kajiwara picked up promptly. Kano? What's going on? Could I speak with Mr. Osawa? I suppose that'd be alright. What for, though? There's something I need to confirm for him. I need him to confirm for me. It's an emergency. Alright. Just make sure not to tell him anything about the investigation. Sure thing. After a while, a man's hoarse voice came over the line. Osawa speaking. Can I help you? It's Detective Kano from the Shibuya precinct. Time is critical, so I need to just cut to the chase here. Kano took a deep breath. Did you give the antiviral drug to your daughter Hitomi? Osawa let out a gasp. What? What are you talking about? Here we go. Did you give the antiviral drug to your daughter Hitomi? Sawa let out a gasp. What are you talking about? I'm the one asking the questions here, Mr. Osawa. Did you give the antiviral drug to your daughter Hitomi? I'm not sure I understand the question. Sawa's voice trembled as he spoke. Kano was sure he'd hit the nail right on the head. I know what the Syndicate is really after, Mr. Osawa. This leads to the bad ending. It's the virus. Osawa remained silent. Mr. Osawa? Is everything alright? Yep. The line went dead. Yep. Technically, that's incorrect, Stanley muttered. It's not the virus they're after, it's his daughter Hitomi who's carrying the antiviral. Now it was clear why the criminals were after Hitomi. He saw an uneasy look on Stanley's face. Something on your mind? Kano asked. I'm just going to go back because it doesn't seem like that's going to lead to anything. Hitomi. Osawa remained silent. Mr. Osawa, is everything alright? Or at least it's no longer a bad end. Guess that answers that well enough, Kano said as he put away his phone. Now it was clear why the criminals were after Hitomi. He saw an uneasy look on Stanley's face. Something on your mind? Kano asked. Stanley responded with a question of his own. If Hitomi was carrying the antiviral, how were the criminals planning on getting it from her? Kano thought for a moment. Well, taking her by force at the Scramble posed too high a risk, he said. There were nearly 100 detectives there, and they must have guessed there would be. That's why they devised the attaché case relay. They wanted to abduct Hitomi somewhere away from the Dragnet's notice. This was the plan that all the signs seemed to suggest. But still, he added, I wonder how they managed to lead her away from police protection. A look of revelation crossed Stanley's face. All they'd need to do was convince her to go of her own accord. But how? Kano asked. Then it came to him. He thought back to Hitomi's initial contact with Tariq al-Karawan. Just before he'd taken the attaché case from her, the two had a brief conversation. It was possible al-Karawan had given Hitomi some form of instructions then. Guess we're back to tracking down al-Karawan again, huh? Kano could tell from the look in Stanley's eyes that he was on the verge of saying something. Probably some remark about how Tenno had allowed al-Karawan to run free. Right now, Kano wasn't going to argue the point. After this case was resolved, he'd discover what Tenno's real motives were. Once he did, Stanley would eat his words. In the meantime, we can't just wander around looking without any leads, he said. Till we get more intel, let's see what we can do with the security cameras back in the precinct. Numerous monitors shone down on the pair as they entered the Shibuya precinct surveillance room. Each showed an array of faces of individuals somewhere in Shibuya. Kano asked one of the operatives to pull up al-Karawan's data on the screen. By selecting each of the faces on the monitors, in turn, they would run a comparison to determine if anyone among them was al-Karawan. One by one, the operator made his way through the faces. Assuming their target was still in Shibuya, there was a high likelihood they'd find him. But a minute ticked past. Still no sign of him. Kano's tone grew more and more impatient as he directed the operator's search. Just calm down, Stanley said. He set a hand on Kano's shoulder. You keep wasting your energy when you don't need to. That's just how I do things, Kano replied. I'm energetic because I care. He pointed out another face to the operator. Well, you're setting yourself up for a short life. With a sigh, Stanley sank into a nearby chair. My brother was like you. The American spoke so quietly that his voice was barely audible. 10 minutes later, a man clad in black appeared on one of the monitors. The operator lined up his cursor. Harrison check confirmed that it was al-Karawan. Yes, Kano hissed, pumping his fist. It appeared that their quarry was simply walking around town, calmly and composed. Kano radioed in al-Karawan's location to Kuze. All units intercept the suspect on the double, Kuze ordered. Kano will provide guidance using the surveillance monitors. They saw al-Karawan stop in front of a cigarette vending machine. Is he waiting for someone? Sasayama reporting, I've got eyes on the mutt. Perpetrator, hook, to put someone in cuffs. Dipper, pickpocket, wants, outstanding warrants. Hang paper to write multiple citations, and other such traditional police. Kano's partner had evidently been nearby. I'm making the arrest, he said. There was a note of courage in Sasayama's voice. He came into view on the monitor, walking casually. At some point, he ditched his anime nerd costume for a cat mascot suit. Oh no, Kano muttered. That get-up's gonna make Sasayama stand out like a sore thumb. Shoot! The mutt spotted me! Going in pursuit. Sasayama slipped out of the camera's view. Whoa!
What gives? Let go of me! You're Mr. Yadagashita, right? Look, I'm sorry, but I really do need to turn that costume. Voice came in over the wireless. It sounded like Sasayama was caught up in an argument with someone. Sasayama, Kano shouted as he eyed the monitor. Kano, I need some help here. Requesting emergency backup. Line went dead before Sasayama could finish. Kano didn't have the faintest idea what was going on, but obviously his partner needed him. He rushed out of the precinct.
When he arrived at the scene, he saw Sasayama, still in the cat costume, cut up in a scuffle with a man he'd never seen before. There was no sign of Kano. Sasayama, what's going on? That's an excellent question, Sasayama replied. Guy just came out of nowhere. He sounded pretty riled up. Sir, I need you to return this costume. My boss was very insistent on that point. The man was panting with exertion, shouting in Sasayama's face. Is he the owner of the suit? What's the deal with that thing, Sasayama? Kano asked. I bought it at a variety store on Shibuya. I figured it'd be a perfect disguise. I didn't steal anything. Sir, I'm telling you, you need to give that back. I'm telling you, I've got no idea what you're on about. Sasayama stamped his foot. I realize that you're not Mr. Yadagashita. That isn't the issue. I just need you to return that costume. Alright, sure, I'll give it to you. I just need it a little longer, so let me go. I can't do that, sir. I need you to get out of that suit right away. Yeah, I get that, buddy, but no can do. It's like I told you before. The zipper on this thing's snagged. Kano watched as the argument descended further and further into absurdity. Meanwhile, Kano was getting away. This was ridiculous. He turned to go in pursuit of the suspect. Kano, wait! Sasayama called out. Come on, help me out, man. Huh? Let me get out of this thing. Help me get this thing off. Now really isn't the time for this, Kano replied. Going after the suspect. Oh, I get it. You're gonna ditch me here so you can take all the credit for yourself. Whoa, what? I was this close to nabbing the guy. That arrest is mine to make, and you know it! It wasn't as though Kano couldn't emphasize. If Sasayama hadn't been blindsided by this random stranger, he probably would have caught Kano just fine. Alright then, Kano said. He reached for the zipper at the back of the cat suit. But as Sasayama had said, the metal fittings were snagged and refused to budge. Hurry up! I'm trying! There's no time to do this slowly and carefully. Kano yanked down on the zipper hard. Stop! The stranger shrieked in alarm. Don't be so rough like that! But if I don't, I'll never... You mustn't! If you aren't careful, you'll cause a malfunction! Function? How was this guy talking about? Kano got an ever finer grip on the zipper and pulled again. Meow? Paused in surprise as Sasayama mewed. What? And Sasayama let out a little cry. Except it didn't sound like Sasayama's voice at all. Guys, Sasayama said, there's something making a rumbling noise inside this thing. He sounded pretty alarmed. Uh-oh, said the other man. It has started. His face went pale. What are you talking about, Sasayama demanded. What started? The man hesitated, then seemed to come to a decision. Well, you see, it is no ordinary cat costume. Meaning what exactly? Our shop rented this unit out by mistake. Oh, I had no idea it was anything so horrifying. Not until the boss filled me in a little while ago. What's horrifying? You're not answering the question! The man's gaze grew hollow, distant. Cats, he said. For a moment there was only silence, then Sasayama spoke up nervously. Well, yeah, it's a cat. I know that already. No, you're not listening. This is a cat's. Like I said, I already know it's a cat. Anyone can see that just from looking at it. No, not a cat. Cats! costume as transmission system. Developed by Far East Costume Rental's high-tech department, there was an official corporate notice saying this is just a prototype of potentially dangerous, so do not lend it out under any circumstances. But it was accidentally rented by mistake.
Yeah.
The meowing started back up again. With each new mew, the sound got faster. Soon it sounded less like a cat and more like some mechanism that was whirling about. There was a sudden, fierce, blinding flash. Space itself began to warp in a roughly 3-meter radius around Sasayama and his costume. A moment later, Kano and the others had vanished. Excuse me? Kano, Sasayama, and the rental guy were sent into another dimension due to a malfunction in the cats. Detective Sasayama should probably never have put that cat costume on. He mentioned buying it at a variety shop on Sendergai. That's your lead here. What the fuck? What the fuck? Come on, man. Why does Sasayama have to be such a fucking idiot? Also, I'm like right at the end. Okay, so I need to go here. About here? Want me to handle it? No, I'll handle it myself. I feel a little guilty about having him go out of his way for me more than he already has. Maybe I should just deal with it myself. Looks a bit disappointed when I tell him that. Is that it? Is that the only change here? No. Buy the necklace, haul the costume. I haul the costume with me. But as I walk along, I start regretting my decision. I can't find a good place to throw the cat outfit away. Finally, I found a convenience store that looks like it'll do just fine. One of the employees is out front cleaning up the trash can. Several large garbage bags line the side of the road. Perfect. Maybe I can have him toss out the costume along with everything else. Excuse me, so I've got this old cat suit here? I figure it can't hurt to ask. Yeah, I know. Shop boy takes the costume from me. Saku Okado, 22-year-old getting by on part-time employment. Recently, after a number of employees quit in rapid succession, the owner hurriedly took on several new hires, but for some reason, instead of everyone chipping in on the cleaning, Okado always winds up stuck doing it. You here to throw this thing out? I got it. Sounded wholly unsurprised. He accepted it so blithely that I actually feel bad. Been like this all morning, he says. I don't even care anymore. Just throw away what you need and be on your way, I guess. Been like what all morning? I'm out here cleaning and people keep dumping trash on me. First it was this couple that up and threw a garbage bag at me. Chiendo and Hitomi Osawa, the two had just run into a girl called Kanan. After that, some homeless-looking guy came by, took all his clothes off and left. Detective Yuji Sasayama from the Shibuya precinct. At the moment, Sasayama is searching for a costume for his next disguise. Just like now, some chubby girl tossed out some empty cardboard boxes and a bunch of empty bottles. Did I miss a... No, I didn't. That must have been Cheery. She was probably drinking the burning hammer while she was walking along. So when you came by just now with this thing, I knew right away. Yep, this again. I'm sorry. It's alright. 3 times, 4 times, what's the difference? Flashes a bright smile, but it's clearly insincere. Then he looks at me more closely. Huh? Aren't you the girlfriend of that dude who threw the bag of garbage at me? What? Nope, not me.
Huh. Guess I'm misremembering then. Well, anyway, thanks for your help with this. Oh, anyway, thanks for your help with this. I gave the guy a bow.
At a sort of mall.
Alright, here we go.
Anything different?
To be continued. Okay. Back to Kano.
"10 minutes later.
Bottom black appeared on the monitors.
Checks out. Set the suspect on the double. Got eyes on the mutt. He was nearby. "I'm making the arrest," he said. There was a note of courage in Sasayama's voice. He came into view on the monitor, walking casually. At some point, he ditched his anime nerd costume for a street dancer's getup. It didn't appear that Alcalawan had noticed him yet. Bit by bit, Sasayama closed the distance. Not much further now. Kano's hand balled into a fist as he watched. And then something unexpected happened. Another man came into view right in the middle of the monitor. Teruo Toyama, while searching for Hana at Shibuya Gigo, he was located by a duo of debt collectors and fled the scene. Hana left Gigo to find him and ran into him here in Meru Yamacho. Pair are heading toward Bueno Dori, trying to find a place to hide. There was no sound, but they could see that the newcomer was shouting something. As Alcarawan turned to look at the man, Sasayama lurched himself like a bullet from a gun. In an instant, the detective and the perp were locked in a violent scuffle right there on the street. Kano swallowed a lump in his throat as he watched the scuffle unfold. Earlier in the day, Alcarawan had done a number on Sasayama, but this time the detective had the upper hand. He got a grip on Alcarawan's neck and kneed him repeatedly. Alcarawan tried desperately to bring Sasayama to the ground. Sasayama braced himself to avoid the takedown. Then he shifted his stance and took Alcarawan to the pavement with a spectacular hip throw. Yes! Kano clapped his hands together in excitement. Watching the perp catching the perp in a scarf hold, Sasayama got out his handcuffs. A technique in judo involves wrapping an arm around the opponent's neck while performing an upper body pin. Stanley, we should head to the scene, Kano said. He looked away from the monitor for a mere moment, and when he looked back, Sasayama had released his hold and crumbled to the ground. What? Panicked, Kano stared at the image of his friend. There was something jutting out of Sasayama's abdomen. "Zoom in!" Kano cried frantically. The camera closed in on Sasayama. Now Kano could see exactly what he'd feared. Sasayama had been stabbed in the gut. Blood pooled on the pavement around him. Kano screamed. "Sasayama!" The camera showed several other detectives arriving at the scene, capturing Alcarawan before he could escape. Sasayama lay motionless. The pool of blood around him spread further and further across the pavement. Unable to look any longer, Kano rushed from the surveillance room. To be continued. Gulp.
Now there's Osawa left.
What are you talking about? Detective. I'm the one asking the questions, is Mr. Osawa. Did you give the antiviral drug to your daughter Hitomi? I'm not sure I understand the question. I know what the Syndicate is really after, Mr. Osawa. So's mind went blank when he heard what Kano said next. He could give no reply. Mr. Osawa? The detective continued after a moment. Is everything alright? Without really thinking, Osawa hung up. Osawa staggered out of the living room. He needed to be alone. To his surprise, Kajiwara didn't try to stop him. Shutting his study door behind him, he dropped onto his sofa and grabbed 3 times his normal dosage of stomach pills. There was no water in the room, so he had to swallow them dry. Detective Kano's words echoed in his mind. You know what the Syndicate is really after, Mr. Osawa? It's Hitomi. There was only one reason they could be after Hitomi. He broke out in a cold sweat as he began to understand what this kidnapping was really about. It all started 6 days earlier. It was April 22nd. Osawa had just returned from the United States the day before. He was in the midst of some routine work at the General Research Lab when his cell phone rang. The LCD display showed an unlisted caller. With some hesitation, Osawa picked up. Hello? Is this Kenji Osawa? The caller was using a voice modulator, a type of device or software used to make one's voice sound different. Changing a voice to the point of making a voice print or tone analysis complete impossible presents a major challenge. To be able to do so in real time requires major financial and technological resources. Osawa raised an eyebrow. Yes? Go and analyze Hitomi's blood. Her blood. If you don't, she's going to die. With that, the caller hung up. There was an intensity behind this that made Osawa sure it wasn't just some prank call. Had Hitomi come into the lab ASAP. He told Hitomi he wanted a sample of her blood for an experiment. She agreed, suspecting nothing. Placed some of the blood he'd drawn into a glass slide, then added some fluorescein, a type of fluorescent dye. A yellow-green liquid, a type of fluorescent dye, chiefly used in preparing specimens for viewing under a fluorescent microscope, but it has other uses as well, such as a diagnostic reagent administered in eye exams. Its highest volume used is on St. Patrick's Day, when massive amounts of fluorescein are used to dye the Chicago River green. Fluorescent dye, a type of dye that causes the dyed substance to emit higher wavelength fluorescent light when illuminated with a certain other type of light. Such dyes can reveal fine details when used on specimen viewing through a fluorescent microscope. Placing the slide under a fluorescence microscope, he took a look. Can't be. Osawa could barely believe his eyes. Wriggling around the microscope was the Grim Reaper's sickle itself. There was no mistaking it. Hitomi was infected with the Uwa virus. Trembling, Osawa hurried to his computer. He opened the Uwa virus folder on his monitor. Within were images showing the stage of the virus's propagation. Double-click to magnify the first image. The Reaper's sickles were interlocked with one another. He clicked on the next image. After further propagation, the Uwa virus looked less like a sickle and more a sort of insectoid larva. Next was the final image. Interlocking into a single mass, the Uwa virus vaguely resembled a sinister, many-petaled sunflower. It took a mere 12 hours for the pathogen to develop to this point and begin its hideous destruction of the human body. Tomi's infection sample was still in the state shown in the first image. There was still a chance to save her. Osawa slumped back in his chair, huddling in on himself. He had no choice. There was only one way to save Hitomi. He would have to administer the nearly completed antiviral. Using the antiviral without official approval was a grievous violation of company policy. Acting against company rules and regulations, Okoshi Pharmaceutical prohibits leaking work-related information to outsiders. In the case of a major violation, not only can the violator be fired, but the company may also seek indemnities. Still, Osawa didn't have time to get the higher-ups to approve a clinical trial. He might be punished severely for it, but this was his only option. His daughter's life was at stake. But there was also another, even bigger hurdle in his way. The antiviral drug was stored in the deepest recesses of the biochemical research building. A high-intensity X-ray scanner was set up at the entrance of the storage area. It made it impossible for him to take research materials out. A type of radiation, also referred to as Röntgen rays, with a shorter wavelength than UV light, but a longer wavelength than gamma rays. Because X-rays can penetrate many objects with little absorption or scattering, they can be used to create images of internal structure. Hospitals, for example, use X-ray technology to examine the insides of patients' bodies, while security personnel use it to scan luggage at airports and to search for bombs. Well, if he couldn't get the antiviral out of there, he'd just have to bring Hitomi in. A course of action quickly took shape in his mind. First, he'd need to slip out of the general research building. He would then head to the biochemical research facility and show his ID card to the guard at the front gate. Identification card. Many facilities that carry out highly classified research assign different levels of security clearance to individual researchers, and only those with suitable clearance, as indicated by their ID cards, are submitted to restricted areas. Development of more advanced technologies such as electronic ID tags are replacing older barcode type entry cards. After passing through the lobby under the watchful gaze of several security cameras, he'd reach an elevator at the end of the hall that went directly to the storage section. This elevator required an ID card scan to operate. Down, down, down. It would take about 20 seconds to get down to the first basement level and arrive at the entrance to the storage area. Finding an excuse to get Hitomi that far ought to be doable. The security guards got suspicious, so Osawa could say it was for a top-secret hematology experiment, and the guard would probably believe him. The problem was what came after. Getting into the storage area itself required fingerprint authentication for both Osawa and Tanaka. This meant that he couldn't possibly get the antiviral without Tanaka's cooperation. Desperate with uncertainty, Osawa called up Tanaka. He frantically explained the situation. Understood, Tanaka replied. We need to get her this drug as soon as possible. If the company finds out about this, he'll be held accountable for violation of corporate policy along with me. Are you sure you're okay with that? What are you talking about? Hitomi's life is more important than company policy. Tanaka spoke without hesitation. Osawa felt an immense surge of gratitude for his assistant. I have to say, I'm deeply moved by your determination, Tanaka added. Moved? Whatever for? You really are worried about Hitomi. Osawa's gratitude faded. What are you talking about? Of course I am. My apologies. Just that putting your career on the line is for something so personal is... It's what? It's not like me? No. Oh, yes. Sorry. Now Tanaka's voice was colored with embarrassment. Just what sort of person do you think I am? Osawa resisted the urge to ask the question out loud. A short time later, Osawa and Tanaka stood before the door to the secure storage area. The security guard had let them in without the slightest suspicion. Osawa pressed his index finger to the fingerprint scanner first. Accepted. He realized that he'd been holding his breath as this authorization finally went through. Half a moment later, Tanaka touched his own finger to the scanner plate. Accepted. The lock released with an audible clang, and the heavy door opened. Osawa hurried to retrieve the antiviral as he picked up a small vial. He had a sudden realization. They were finally going to use the drug in a human test. His fatherly wish to cure Hitomi was overlaid by an intense rush of curiosity. Researchers' drive to discover his results. Hurry. Need to hurry. I need to administer the antiviral as soon as possible. Osawa could hardly fend off his excitement. Over the course of the next few hours following the injection, the Uwa virus would be eradicated from Hitomi's body. There have been some fever and cramping as temporary side effects, but the DDS had done a spectacular job of stomping out the virus. Drug delivery system, also known as smart drug delivery, the ability to target a specific region of the body with a specific drug, has momentous implications for the future of medicine. DDS technology is currently being tested extensively around the world. In saving his daughter's life, Osawa had proven the value of his research. If he had been asked which made him happier, he would have been hard-pressed to give an answer. Afterwards, he asked Hitomi where she could have become infected. She had no idea. He explained the need for secrecy and strictly forbade her telling anyone else what had happened. Now a week had passed since Osawa gave the drug to Hitomi. He'd been conducting checks and had discovered that the DDS had been broken down but remained in Hitomi's bloodstream. Extracting the DDS was a simple matter, requiring just a small blood sample from around the nape of the neck. The DDS tends to linger in the nape of the neck because of the lymph nodes located there. Lymph nodes identify viruses that invade the body as foreign substances to be attacked, but they are not always able to overcome particularly powerful pathogens. In such cases, the virus propagates rapidly inside of them. Once the patient has been treated, the antiviral will seek out the virus and accumulate there as well. The DDS itself was simply the delivery system for the antiviral drug. Residual amounts of antiviral itself stayed behind within the cells. The materials used to create the DDS must, as a matter of course, cause minimal or no harm to the human body. Ideally, rather than accumulating inside the body, DDS substances should be either digested and absorbed or excreted. Because the antiviral must remain in the body for as long as the virus is active, however, a very careful balance must be struck between persistence and dissipation. Using the DDS, it was possible to extract those minuscule amounts from cells in a blood sample. It might take considerable time, but a sufficiently detailed analysis could allow for the antiviral drug itself to be reconstructed. Osawa felt a chill as he contemplated the situation. Kidnappers had known how tough security was at the lab, so they'd come up with the idea of using a human vessel to get what they needed from within. By infecting Hitomi with the Uo virus, they'd ensure that she received the antiviral, that she'd have it in her blood. If Tanaka was working with the kidnappers, that explained why he'd been so cooperative about the fingerprint scanner. "Damn it!" Osawa shouted. He clutched his head in his hands. Tanaka had been his partner and trusted confidant for years. Osawa refused to believe he'd been betrayed like this. Front door chime sounded. "Mr. Osawa," Kajiwara called out. "It appears you have a visitor. Could you handle that?" "Huh. Who could it possibly be now of all times?" "You deal with it." Osawa was in no state of mind to receive a guest. "I can't do that, sir," Kajiwara said firmly. "You can't let the kidnappers learn that there are detectives here." "Then have I take care of it," Osawa told him. Kajiwara headed off. Right now, Osawa just wanted some time to think by himself. Was Tanaka really one of the kidnappers? He was after the antiviral. He'd had plenty of opportunities to get his hands on it when they gave it to Hitomi, hadn't he? Was that really what these people wanted, after all? The answer seemed to evade him at every turn. Unable to think of what else to do, he tried the internet fortune teller again. He got the very result a second time. If you don't get over your indifference to the world might start to harbor quite a grudge. My indifference to the world around me, huh? Truth was that even with his closest companions, even with Tanaka for instance, his relationship had always been strictly a matter of business. He'd never really taken it upon himself to get to know Tanaka as a person. That was pretty much the case for everyone he knew. He harbored no interest in other people. He had no concern for his fellow man. He had made itself abundantly clear when he received a microscope as a birthday present way back in first grade. Even now, he still remembered the shock he'd felt when he first looked through the lens for the first time. He discovered a new, almost infinite world hidden in the midst of one he'd always thought was too small. By comparison, the real world seemed bland and ugly. Wherever he looked, wherever he went, he had to contend with tedium. It hadn't taken long for him to become more charmed by the world under his microscope than the one around him. It was like a calm, quiet little seaside, a beach where he could just sit and stare out at the waves. He wanted to stay immersed in that world forever and ever. Before he knew it, he was an adult, and then a husband, and then a father. People around him thought him an odd fellow, and he hadn't let that change the way he lived his life. And this, now, was the result. He hadn't been betrayed by Tanaka. He didn't know Tanaka well enough for that. Find a way to connect more deeply with the people around you and start living a better life before it's too late. Just do that, and you're sure to have a wonderful future ahead. Osawa picked up the cell phone and dialed Tanaka's number. I had tried calling him repeatedly and hadn't gotten through. It was doubtful that he'd pick up. Still, Osawa had to try. The phone rang several times. He listened grimly to the empty mechanical sound, preparing himself for disappointment. What is it? Tanaka's voice sounded coldly in Osawa's ear. The tension was electric. Keep out! Huh. Actually, what the fuck? Osawa's story is taking like quite a while to get through. Osawa is having quite the fucking journey. Alright, well, let me see if meeting with him changes something. Dragged himself to his feet. Alright. He stumbled warily back to the living room when the investigators were staring at the intercom monitor with concern. The intercom's hidden camera showed a man with an unsettling grin poised intimidatingly outside the front gate. Mr. Osawa didn't recognize him. Yes, who is it? He asked guardedly through the intercom. It's Minorikawa. Where might I know you from, Mr. Minorikawa? Oh, you know, here and there. I mean, there's only one Minorikawa, really. Are you playing games with me? I don't have time for that. Please, just open up. There's no way I'm letting you in, Osawa said. The nonsensical badgering continued. Look, just hold your horses. I'm here for an interview. You got that? An interview? That's right. It's a piece for 4-Star General Gossip. The name of the magazine brought up an unpleasant memory. It was the gossip rag that had run the article about his political marriage. Wait, this is for one of those kinds of articles? What do you mean, those kinds of articles? I'm just looking for an interview. The man's tone was both high-handed and belligerent. Like hell you are. I'm not talking to anyone from the gossip. You're not the one I'm here to talk to. I want an interview with your twin daughters. My daughters? I understand they won a shared prize for a beauty contest at Midoriyama Academy. If you wouldn't mind my interviewing them, Furious, Osawa cut off the intercom. This was no time to be indulging someone else's nonsense. Hey, what gives? Hey, what gives? The man shouting so loud his voice carried past the gate and through the front door. I'm begging you here. I'm on my hands and knees. He wasn't actually on his hands and knees. Osawa could see that clearly through the intercom monitor. Your daughters aren't home. Can you at least tell them I want to get in touch with them? Mr. Osawa, Kajiwa said, frowning. This isn't a good time to have someone drawing attention to your home. All right. I'll get rid of him. Osawa hurried out of the house, confronting Minorikawa through the front gate. The journalist had this tenacious look that immediately marked him as a member of the media. Give me your business card, Osawa said. I'll have them get in touch with you later. He took Minorikawa's card, then went right back inside. Back at the study, Osawa tossed Minorikawa's business card into the trash. Unable to think what else to do, he turned the internet fortune teller again. This might be the same.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think I'm going to call it there. So, got through Kano's and Osawa's storyline just keeps going and going. But we have not even started Minorikawa's story. So thank you all for watching, especially if you got this far and stick around, because there's a lot more to come.